Settle in. We've got another face-off today. Think of it like, not Nick Cage, John Travolta, that's silly, but more like WrestleMania 5, the Mega Powers, the Macho Man, and Hulk Hogan. So we're going to take a look today. Tzolk'in and Teotihuacan. Probably won't pronounce it the way you think I should because I'm from Alabama, but we're going to dive in right now. Certain games do feel magical when you put them up against each other, and you can see how maybe one evolved into another, which is why we chose these two to look at. They're from the same designer. They have a really similar theme, so I wanted to dive into that. Now, I want to show you something interesting about both of these games. So this is Tzolk'in and Teotihuacan. Both of these, you'll notice, have very intricate looking boards. Obviously this one's a little bit bigger, but they both have some nice interesting features in the middle. Obviously the turning gear over here and the buildable pyramid over here. That's an interesting point because these are both eye-catching games. So today we're going to take a look, as when we do these videos, we're going to look at the mechanics, obviously, of the two put together, the user interface, what the actual individual does on their turn. Art and stuff will compare, but I mean, they're both fantastic. And we're going to come out with the winner on top, which one of these you should get if you're only going to get one right now. Both of these games feature a very, what I used to call Stefan Feld feel of your choices are always tricky, and you feel like you should be playing 2 turns ahead, but I'm starting to call that the Taschini model or Taschini model. I'm not entirely sure how to pronounce that, but because these games both feature some interesting points about planning ahead. Not necessarily long-term strategy. Yes, that's important, but your tactics have to be slowed down a little bit. Here's what I mean. When you place in Tzolk'in, you put on this clock, this calendar sort of deal here, right? And it's got all these cogs that move, but it is worker placement, but on your turn, you can either place all your workers or some of your workers, or you can pull back some or all of your workers. You can't place and pull. So if I wanted to place, you were going to pay a cost based up around the edges in corn. Now, corn is kind of your main currency. It's your money, essentially. But you're also going to pay a penalty if you pay more than one worker. And that's kind of interesting how it does. But what's going to happen is, notice that the actions are always slightly less good down here as opposed to where they are on the end of the calendar. So as this thing rotates after everyone's turn, your characters are going to move around the board. And as it gets better, the longer you wait, the better that action or different that action is going to be. So by the end of it, your action is going to get all the way around here to the edge of the board. And if you don't choose to use one of the actions before you hit this spot where it rotates off, you lose that worker back to your hand. So essentially you have to kind of time things out, but you have to do these pull turns even when it might not be the most advantageous if you're not thinking ahead close enough. But that is the main mechanic of this game. You're placing. These are going to get you victory points. These are going to get you certain perks and benefits to get you more workers, to use buildings and buy buildings with corn instead, to trade your currency in here. Over here is going to be more about moving up these technology tracks and also moving up these worship tracks, which are ways to score points at the end of the game, as well as they're going to let you build these buildings. The top part there is how to get mostly resources, and here's how to get mostly corn, but that is how this game is made. Now notice, now I painted mine. This doesn't normally look like this, but it was just right for the painting, kind of had to do it. But that alone right there is just so much fun to do. But the idea behind it is so interesting that you're placing them here and they'll rotate around and get better. Whereas over here, its counterpart features a moving dice mechanic where essentially you're going to have these dice that are your workers. Now you never roll these. You only have 4 in the game. You only get your 4th one after you've ascended. We'll talk about that in just a minute. You're going to take your actions here based on how far you want to move around the board. You can move 1, 2, or 3 spaces. Now, the spaces that are printed on the board are not always the same. You can adjust it with tiles that it gives you to change up the style if you want to play. Now, essentially, you're going to move. Let's say I'm here, and I want to land on this space. This is how you build the pyramid, and I'll tell you what all the actions do. If I want to move here, I would have to pay a cocoa per color that's already there, including my own. So no one's here, so I don't have to pay a cocoa to do it. Then you do the action, and I had the person who taught me this game said it's a game of and-thens, and that's a very good point. Pay your cocoa, and then you take the action listed here on the board, and then you're going to do the dice raising, which means anytime you see that symbol, you're going to change your dice up. Now the reason that matters, so for instance, if I'd have moved over here, this dice, I would have to pay 2 cocoa since there's 2 people there, and then I would move up, obviously, to do this action. But anytime you move a 5 to a 6, you ascend. Essentially, this person dies. You will move up on this track here, which is victory points at the end of the game. It's a nice calculus where you're multiplying the amount of these that are taken, and the more of these that go out these houses, the less point value this multiplication table becomes. So it's kind of a tricky little matrix there, but you're multiplying it times this. But anyway, as you ascend, you have a choice. You can get either 5 cocoa, you can move up one of these worship tracks, you can get 5 victory points, you can move up 2 of those worship tracks for 3 cocoa, or you can get 2 cocoa and gain your 3rd worker or 4th worker, which is nice to have. The way this works is you're going to have a little token here and here. When they meet, an eclipse happens. The eclipse happens 3 times. You do 3 scorings. You score based on, you feed your workers. Both games you feed your workers, by the way. It's corn over there, cocoa over here. You're going to also gain your victory points based on this calculation here. Then you're going to gain points who's built the most, as well as multiplying 4 for the first time, 3 for the first time, 2 for the 3rd time, where you are on this building track. So then you're going to, let me show you the actions, what you're going to be doing, because that is essentially the game over and over and over, rinse and repeat until you're done. There are some things printed on the board here that are normally here, but if you play, again, all of these end game goals can change. There are a couple more interesting spots. And the reason why I say it's end end, normally any of these little gray discovery tiles is full of a nice little bonus. So when you go here, instead of taking the main action, you can lock your dice, which means it's not available till you unlock it, and take the top action or the bottom action, or you can pay a cocoa to do both, which means you can go up that track and then whatever that discovery tile is. I'm not going to teach you the whole game or show you every tile. That's for other videos. But essentially, you get wood here, stone there, gold there. You build the tiles of the pyramid here, and if you cover the symbols a certain way, you get more victory points, and you can go up those tracks depending on if you cover a colorful tile. This is where you build the steps to the pyramid, which you'll see right there, and then that's technology that boosts your stuff every time. That is that place over there where you get the buildings off, and you take them off here to gain in the short-term victory points, but again, you're making this worse. And games have swung by going from 2 to 1. Many, many times I've seen that happen where someone's very high on this track, they're going to win by about 2 points. When this swings from 2 points down to 1, their 14 points become 7 points and totally changes the end of the game. Now, that is how you play Teotihuacan. So let's look at some of the art and some of the pieces and some of the interface right now. Now, we're going to start over here with Tzolkin. Now, forget the fact that this is incredibly detailed and painted now, because it normally is just bland plastic, but all those details are there. They're just not painted and pulled off. I would wager that since Tzolkin's a little bit older, that had this game been made now, the rest of the board might look a little better. Some of the font choices might be different, just because it looks a little dated. And so if we saw it come out the same year that Teotihuacan came out, you would probably get something a little more like this. This is a little bit more refined, the art on here. They're both top-down views. Actually, this one's more of an isometric here, zoomed out, but this is very much a top-down of a village with the pyramid in the middle and the different buildings around it. But something about the aesthetic of Teotihuacan's board is better to me. I don't know if it's the muted colors or kind of the more realistic versus the kind of brighter over here, but something about this does it better for me, even though there are actual pyramids drawn over there for those tracks, whereas these are just kind of like almost Art Deco style, which is kind of interesting. So you can pick which you think is better there. Some of you might like the bright colors, even though it's got kind of that more dated Agizia style. It actually does remind me of Agizia. It might even be the same artist, I don't know. And this one has that kind of more muted, realistic style. It's up to you. I personally give the win over here for art, barring the cog itself, because that's such a cool piece, over here to Teotihuacan. That's it. Pretty awesome games, both top to bottom. You can see reviews for both games elsewhere here on the Dice Tower, but these are both fantastic games. So that's not what you came for. You came for the final win. Which one of these two games, if they're both easily accessible, if they're both, I can walk up and get them, which one am I going to go buy? Well, here's the deal. My answer used to would have been Teotihuacan because I loved it so much. But now the answer to the overall winner for me, it's Tzolkin. Again, I told you earlier, I'm going to butcher these names. I'm sorry. It's just, it's tough. It's hard language. And but the win goes to Tzolkin for me. Over the top. just because that mechanic is so unique and interesting, or placing, and then later on, if you bide your time, it's going to get better. I do love Teotihuacan's, the idea of moving the dice around and ascending and kind of balancing and juggling all that, and hoping that you move the right dice, and oh man, I don't want to mess up by moving the wrong dice, and did I play my turn right this time? Should I have gotten Coco instead so that I'll be ready for feed, or should I just take the -3 points so I can do this action right now? At the end of the day, both of these games are games about tough choices, and that's what makes them so fun, because you are playing strategically and tactically, but you're playing a slowed down version of tactics. You're zoomed out a little bit, thinking multiple turns ahead. Usually every turn is an action in the moment, but also setting up for later. And that's weird because you very rarely feel satisfied with one action. And that's an interesting kind of push and pull of both of these games. Now, art direction. The mechanics themselves, I'm sorry, the board we talked about, I'm going to give it to Teotihuacan, and then some of the other things. But the actual pieces, I love that cog. That is so unique. So art direction and layout of the map actually goes to Tzolkin for that, because I like the way it's laid out and thought out and processed out, where that board spins each one of these and each one's thought out. So well done there. Now, Carla will give you a different answer. Carla says that she likes Teotihuacan better because she likes the strategic dice movement. She feels it's a little more forgiving than Tzolkin is. And that is true. Teotihuacan's a little bit more forgiving. You have a little bit more leeway for mistakes that are made early on than you do with Tzolkin. Whereas if you get behind trying to get corn, you're going to spend a long time trying to get corn and eventually essentially waste your time not being able to do anything else. So at the end of the day, these two giants faced off a la Drew McIntyre and Brock Lesnar. And is that right? Yeah, Drew McIntyre and Brock Lesnar, and as we see what happens, one comes out on top victorious, holding the belt after a long, long time. For me, it is Tzolkin. So, great games. Both of them are great. If it's in your budget to get both, I highly recommend both of these games. These are some of the best Euro games out there. Go check them out. I'm Brian Drake here on the Dice Tower. We've got a lot of these versus videos coming this week. Till next time, I'm Dice Tower Brian, YouTube, or Instagram and Twitter. We'll see you.
Thanks so much for watching another Dice Tower video. If you enjoy our videos, subscribe to the channel for more fun, comprehensive board game coverage. Also, consider joining us at one of our events. Come to Dice Tower Retreat, a small, intimate gathering where gaming is king. Join us for Dice Tower Cruise, the largest board game cruise. Attend Dice Tower West in Las Vegas for gaming fun on the West Coast, or Dice Tower East in Orlando in sunny Florida. Dice Tower Conventions, the friendliest gaming conventions on Earth. I'm Eric Summerer, and you've been watching The Dice Tower.